Good morning or afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Tech Talk as part of SafetyChain's FSQA technology series. Today we're going to be talking about conquering HACCP and soon HARPC plan management with the power of automation, featuring our guest speaker, Dan Bernkopf. I'll tell you a little bit more about Dan in just a few minutes. I'm Barbara Levin with SafetyChain. I'll be your host today. Before we begin, let me give you a few housekeeping pieces of information. If you have any technical issues during the event today, if you're still online, you can go out, and send a question to our host, and we'll see if we can help you that way. But if you for some reason are having trouble staying online, you can call Webbased Technical Support directly at 877-509-3239. Again, that's 877-509-3239. We've already gotten a couple of questions about the slides and the link to the recording of today's event. Everybody will receive that by close of business Monday via email. At the end of our presentation today, we're going to take questions from the audience, and we will show you how to submit them at that time. Also, for your privacy, you can see the host and panel member names and your name, but not the names of the other attendees. So with that, we've got a great agenda today. We're going to start with looking at some of the challenges of managing a HACCP or a HARPC plan in a manual, paper-driven environment. We're then going to look at how the power of automation is helping teams like yours better ensure risk management, ensure that plans are being followed and documented, minimize waste and rework, and promote effective continuous improvement and audit readiness. We're then going to just take a very brief time to tell you a little bit about SafetyChain's HACCP automation solution. We're going to take your questions, and then when the presentation is officially over, everybody's invited to stay online if you'd like to see a quick demonstration of SafetyChain's HACCP and HARPC automation solution. So I'm very excited to introduce our guest speakers today. Later, Dave Detweiler, our Director of Solutions Consulting, is going to be joining us to give the optional solution demo. But we're going to start with Dan Bernkopf, and we're going to try to find out, and I think it's going to become pretty apparent, why this man's hair is so gray. Because before Dan joined SafetyChain, having trouble saying my words today, before Dan joined SafetyChain, he spent 35 years in your shoes. He was the head of food safety and quality assurance for a variety of well-known companies. Dan was in the definite pen and paper and clipboard age, did not have the opportunity to leverage a lot of the technology that we've got available today, and is very, very insightful when it comes to those challenges and the power of automation in solving those. So we're going to jump right in with our interview with Dan. So first, Dan, welcome to the SafetyChain Tech Talk. And I guess to start, you spent 35 years managing HACCP plans manually. You talk to SafetyChain customers every day who are transitioning from manual systems. So what are some of the challenges of managing HACCP manually and soon HARPC? Maybe we can start with, what I know that you talk about as being meeting the regulatory requirements of the day.
Well, thanks, Barbara. And yes, there are some fundamental issues about meeting those regulatory requirements. You have to make sure that you are up to speed on the current regulations. And you have to do that not only for one, but perhaps many of your HACCP plans. You have to make sure that you understand the regulations that govern your products, and those they could be constantly changing. There are new regulations all the time, or new interpretations of those regulations. So it's very fundamental to make sure that you understand what's going on in your business, as well as you have to think about risk analysis and sound science. Are there new interventions that can make your products and perform better or are safer when the consumer consumes them, reducing risk. So this is a fundamental issue, making sure that you're constantly aware of what's going on in the regulatory realm and the science realm.
Right, and I think one of the things that you've always said a lot is once you have new science, then you've got to go back and make sure that you're designing the right, critical control points around them. Dan, in addition to meeting those regulatory requirements, manual processes also present a lot of challenges when it comes to executing your HACCP plans. Can you give us some insight on that?
Well, sure. We just talked about setting up the fundamentals of your program, but the real issue going forward, the thing that gave me gray hair was the plan execution. You've got multiple plans potentially at a single facility. Perhaps you're dealing with multiple facilities as well. Do you have the right monitoring frequencies? Are they being followed? Are you catching those non-compliances? Are you executing timely CAPAs? All those things are the concern. And as well, with USDA facilities, you need to make sure that you're verifying the documents, meaning your HACCP program. Are they meeting the requirements, your monitoring frequencies, and critical limits on a regular basis for your pre-operational review requirements?
So, we've talked about that a lot. The other thing, too, is, there's some folks, I think, we discussed this on FSMA Friday last week, that think, well, I'm going to be affected by FSMA, so I'm going to have to migrate from HACCP to HARPC. It's really just the same thing. It's just HACCP in disguise, but it isn't. It's going to become worse with HARPC and HARPC for a couple of reasons. Any insight on that?
Oh, yes. There are going to be some differences, particularly on the supplier compliance side. The FDA is really looking at the preventive side of that, and so there's going to be a great deal of focus there, a great deal of documentation that's going to be required to be maintained at production facility, warehouse facility, and all those facilities covered by FSMA coming forward.
And you have to have a separate HARPC plan for every facility, even if those facilities are doing the same exact thing. And you've got to have a separate plan for every product or groups of similar products. So that's going to add some challenges, too. Dan, I know that I know that when you talk about document control, that's where some of your gray hair came from. When you're in a manual system, what are some of the key document control issues that you're seeing companies struggle with today?
Well, we're dealing with paper, or we're dealing with shared drives, and making sure that all of your programs, your PRPs, are up to date, and that those that are using them on a regular basis are using the most current editions. One of the great fears is that there's the wrong edition of something out there. That's true of your forms as well. I've seen it. It's one of those you got to be kidding me moments. You're standing over a technician who's doing a wonderful job. You're looking over at their shoulder at what they're doing for HACCP monitoring, and they're using a form that's 2 weeks out of date. Those are the kinds of things that are very frustrating. Manual errors, human errors occur, and they need to be prevented.
Yeah, we've also spoken about, missing steps at the end of the shift, too. I asked you to give me some examples, and you used the acronym with me, TNTC, which I thought I had heard every acronym, Dan, that you had over the last almost 4 years of working with you. But when you're talking about missing steps, what are some examples? And tell us what TNTC means.
No, well, TNTC is a microbiological term, which means too numerous to count. We were talking about, you were talking about human errors in the execution of HACCP programs. Is the monitoring frequency, is that being followed correctly? Do we know what the critical limits are? Do we go into a corrective action when we're supposed to? The human element and the errors associated really is what drove that comment.
All right. When it comes to HACCP and certainly the USDA, we've discussed many times, they can show up, at your facility every day. They might be looking, for audit information. They might be looking for sanitation information. They might be looking for allergen information. You told me when it comes to getting your hands on the documents and data when you need them, that whatever gray hair didn't come from the document control issues came from this. Can you give us some insight on the issues with getting your hands on documents.
Well, just imagine a thermometer calibration verification record being misfiled and USDA asking for that particular document and having to go through a paper search through file after file. After all, you know, executing a plan is one thing, but being able to show documents quickly shows your intent on implementation. It sends the right message to any regulatory agency or any inspector for that matter. So, you know, paper-based systems, manual errors, that's what gave me a lot of gray hair. But having that USDA inspector wait for that record, not a good thing.
Mm-hmm. So it all comes back to, you know, a saying that we all know in the food safety industry, but, you know, this is about the whole say what you do what you say, right?
Yeah, it's the saying that I've used, that my mentors have taught me: say what you do to meet the regulation, do what you say, make sure you have evidence of that, make sure it works, and make sure it's documented. It's the old verify what you're doing and validate that it works.
Mm-hmm. Very hard to do sometimes on paper. So, you know, all of these challenges, I mean, in and of themselves, you know, they're causing a lot of inefficiencies, but they have a bigger net effect. And, you know, when we talk about, you know, taking a step away from, you know, the 3-foot view of what we have to do every day and kind of trying to look at that 300-point view, the net effect is something that you've often, you know, said to me, or you call being data rich but information poor if you're using a manual system. What do you mean by that?
Well, it goes back to that paper-based system, and people say, well, you've got data on this. And I would say, sure, I've got data. I've got tons of data. I've got it in file cabinets. I've got it in binders. I've got it in boxes. I've got it on-site and off-site. I've got plenty of data. You can even think of The Price is Right. It's behind curtain number A or behind box number 1. The problem is that that's data. If you're looking to gain information out of that data on a paper-based system, it has to be recombined into spreadsheets. So as you're doing your verification tasks on paper-based systems, you're basically saying whether they're compliant or non-compliant. The data that's within, it's not being used. So that's one of the great challenges with paper-based systems. Unless you are re-entering that data into a database or a spreadsheet, it's just compliant information. It doesn't help you build a better program. Does that make sense, Kim?
Yeah, it does, right? You're not, you have paper. You don't have information to use for trending, for continuous improvement. And I think,
that's right.
You know, when we're speaking with folks all the time that are looking to automate, this is usually their #1 issue is, I have all this data, I'm not able to effectively use it, it's not allowing me to create efficiencies. So, you know, let's kind of move on to the second half. We've reviewed all of these challenges, and you know, what we want to do next is really, you know, to address how these challenges can be conquered by automation. Like I said, for those who want to stay, we've got an optional demo at the end of the session with Dan on SafetyChain's HACCP automation, but generically, if you're looking to automate HACCP and automate so that you can easily migrate to HARPC and manage a HARPC plan, these are some of the key things that a HACCP HARPC automation solution will do. Dan, you mentioned earlier supplier compliance and supply chain controls. You know, your HACCP plan, a lot of times, you know, you're on the plant, but you still have to make sure that the supplies that are coming in are compliant. And so there's a lot of automation that takes place there. The ability to define your GMPs, your CCPs, your PRPs, your preventive controls, to be able to define them, to set them up in a system, to schedule them, to have auto alerts go out when something's due. Dan talked about making sure you're following the plan. The ability to collect data on a mobile device at the point of origin so that you're collecting data once and done. You don't have to keep entering that redundant data. The ability to analyze that data in real time according to your requirements and specs so that you're finding non-compliances and getting NCR alerts at the earliest point possible so you can generate timely CAPA and not send non-compliant materials to the next point in your chain or into commerce. The ability to have all of that data time and date stamped and uploaded into a central repository where it becomes accessible and actionable for audit readiness, for continuous improvement, and then having all that data where you can report on it so that you can better assess where your high risks are, and that brings you back to understanding your suppliers and the risks there and supply chain controls. So kind of that's sort of the big picture of some of the things that can be done by automating HACCP and HARPC. And so with that, Dan, let's come back to you now. You know, the HA in both HACCP and HARPC, you know, has to do with hazard analysis, and, you know, it's really about risk management. So when you've got an automated solution that has some or all of the features that we just addressed, Dan, how can automation help companies achieve better assurance of risk management?
Well, part of that has to do with making sure that you're getting the right information in the right place at the right time. And so now all of the records can be centrally located in a central repository, and that can roll up to a plant, or it can roll up enterprise-wide to a headquarters if you're handling multiple plants. But the key part here is you're no longer basing your decisions on whether it's compliant or not compliant. You can actually build trends. And then you can then build those trends and support better risk management. An example would be looking at supplier A versus supplier B, and it's a temperature-sensitive product. Supplier A may have more problems, and with higher temp incidents, you can trend and track that and report that directly to supplier A, seeking continuous improvement there. Same is true in sanitation, where you can look for trouble spots. You can target those employees that are responsible for them, increase their training, look for gained results there. It's true for temperature inconsistencies as well. If you've got coolers that aren't maintaining consistent temperatures, those can all be trended, and you can go after continuous improvement. And at the net of all of this, if you can trend that a monitoring frequency is and a critical limit is being consistently met, perhaps you can reduce some costs. You have to look at your plan and risk assessment, and perhaps you can reduce your monitoring frequency based on your excellent trending of compliance. So
right.
Lots of things you can do with automation.
Yeah, and I know when I asked you for examples for this, you said to me, TNTC, right? I mean, you know, everybody in the audience can probably sit here and think of, you know, 4, 5, 10, 30 bullet points here of if I had all that information in that one place and I could trend it effectively, what efficiencies could I create? What continuous improvement can I do? And I think that that's really the key, as you said, is having all of that information for trending. So one of the things that you said contributed to some of that gray hair was making sure that all of the components of HACCP and soon HARPC plans are followed, and that they're followed correctly, and that they're documented. How does the power of automation support conquering that challenge, Dan?
Well, you know, we go back to that saying, say what you do what you say, document it all. Document it all. So let's talk about documenting it all. If you say in your program, your HACCP program, your requirement is you've got to review it each year, well, you need to make sure that that's auto-scheduled. You don't leave that to chance. You don't let that human error. Same is true with your sanitation standard operating procedure, your other GMPs. They need to be reviewed based on the schedule you set forth in your program. Clearly, a automated system can prompt you in advance to make sure that you're audit ready all the time. Also, when we talk about monitoring activities for HACCP, You want to make sure that those are done when they're supposed to be done. And unfortunately, paper-based systems, and I'm going to use a two-word phrase that's probably unpopular, but subject to pencil whipping. With mobile device data capture and reporting, every record in the system has an unalterable time and date stamp, gaining greater efficacy to those records. So it's great stuff.
So you talked about auto scheduled. So this is a software feature, right? Of most, you know, a HACCP automation solution is going to whatever those tasks are. Right? We always use that example of, you know, when the metal detectors need to be calibrated. So that would get auto-scheduled, right? And the line supervisor is going to get an alert on their mobile device, right, saying, you know, the metal detector, right, it's due at a certain time. And if something isn't entered, then what happens? The manager gets an alert of omission? Is that how that works?
That's exactly right. There's an omission alert. So think about startup of any operation in the morning. There's several tasks that are required to be done, and if any one of those are missed, then you don't have a good startup. And frankly, I'm from the school that if you don't have a great startup, you don't have a great day. So let's prevent those, as I called them earlier. You got to be kidding me moments, those tasks that need to be done at startup successfully before you can run finished product successfully through that line and into stock.
Okay, great. What about finished product testing? How does automation, it's a big piece of HACCP. How does automation support that?
Well, you want to have evidence that your interventions are working. So, you know, micro-analysis is a way of periodically validating that those are true. So in an automated system, you can actually schedule when to take and how many samples to take of a particular product. You can give advance notice to your internal lab or your third-party lab that a sample is coming to them, what it is and what needs to be tested, when that data, and when it's due, when the test dates are due. When that data comes back through the system, the system should then compare it against specifications as a verification engine, and if there is a non-compliant event, something out of spec from finished product micro, an alert goes out to key stakeholders, making sure that corrective actions are put into place. So the whole system of notification is done in today's speed of business, which is critically important and an advantage, a terrific advantage over paper-based systems.
I like that, speed of business. I might use that. So, you know, one of the things that, speaking of TNTC, too numerous to count, is, you know, you and I discuss this all the time, is the amount of waste and the amount of rework that goes on. How does using an automated system help reduce waste and rework, Dan?
Well, just imagine for a moment that you're doing a HACCP verification task, a documentation verification at the end of your shift, and you notice that there is a non-compliant event, a temperature that's out of whack, or a metal detection calibration verification task that wasn't completed successfully. Then that verification has occurred well after the fact, and now the lasso that you have to put around that particular product is probably much greater than it needed to be if that were caught immediately. And technology can do that. Technology, again, speed of business. If there's a non-compliant event, it's reported to the appropriate stakeholders the moment it occurs.
So you don't have to unwrap all of the cookies that went down the line, run them through the metal detector, waste, you know, 10% of the cookies, certainly waste the packaging, because you're getting those something wasn't done or non-compliance alerts in real time. Talk about what a verification engine is a little bit. You touched on it, but maybe elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, actually, verification engine is where a form is filled out that becomes a record. It's submitted into a system where the specifications are preloaded. The data is compared against those preloaded specifications, and it's a verification task. If there's a non-compliant event, it can be reported, and it can generate an alert. And that can all be done through this mobile technology, these devices, these electronic forms, which are also very intuitive, by the way. It's important to point this next step out, is that if a non-compliant data point is entered, electronic forms can cascade open and begin the non-compliant report, NCRs, automatically. They can begin that CAPA process automatically. And among other things, it reduces the training necessary in executing these forms and the proper execution of NCRs and CAPAs.
Right, the forms leading the folks through the steps. I know this is an area where there's real ROI, right? Because, you know, all of your specifications and all of your schedules and all of your SOPs and whatnot are set up in the system and they're scheduled. Your requirements are in there. I mean, you know, we're talking about HACCP, but this could be any requirement. It can be a customer quality attribute requirement. And when that data is entered, it's being analyzed in real time. It's not waiting for somebody to come back, fill everything out on a spreadsheet, get it to a supervisor, has to review it, and then finds the nonconformance. The system is continuously analyzing the data. So there's a lot, minimizing waste and rework is a way that we've heard from certainly our customers here at SafetyChain, where their automation solutions paid for themselves in a matter of months because of just minimizing the waste and rework. So, you know, we talked before about being data-rich, information poor. You know, that was probably the biggest net effect of the manual process. So with automation, how do you promote both continuous improvement and the ability to be audit ready at the drop of a hat? Because, like you said, you know, these folks show up sometimes every day. Can you provide some insight here?
Well, let's talk about the documentation side. With good systems, systems that manage documents will version them correctly. They'll make sure that only the most current version of any document is promoted to those that are using it on a regular basis. And that's a really important aspect of making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. Audit readiness, let's talk about that for a moment. You know, with a task scheduler, with the ability to automate CAPA and the ability to alert against CAPA to make sure that you're putting your corrective and preventive actions in place when they're supposed to is a big key. We can, the technology can escalate alerts if there are past due situations. And if you think about what preventive actions are, that's a learning lesson on what occurred, and a successful preventive action is, in fact, a continuous improvement. You're trying to prevent further occurrences of the same error, mistake, or processing problem.
And then, you know, the trending part, the way that the data can be diced and sliced to trend on what's important to you for continuous improvement. Any examples, any insight there?
Well, I've been in situations where the head of a company has asked me, well, how many times have we been non-compliant on a cool-down situation on a ready-to-eat product? And I would say, oh my goodness, that's going to take me a while for research based on my paper system. In today's systems that are electronic-based, it's just a matter of a couple of clicks of your mouse button. You can dice that data very quickly and generate the reports that you need. And if those reports are meaningful on a daily basis, then you can even promote those reports to a dashboard. The technology allows for that. It's super stuff.
Yeah, and the ability to tie forms to plan requirements, that really makes it easy to pull up the right information. You know, Dan, I had asked you to kind of summarize it up for me of, you know, what's the big picture benefit here? And you spoke a lot about, you know, just things are so much more complex than they were, you know, back when you started in the business. You know, kind of what's that you know, leave people with statement, you know, on what the real advantage is of automating HACCP and HARPC plan management?
Well, the real benefits is really getting rid of paper-based systems. You know, if you think about the technology that is paper today, it's really little better than slate and chisel. It weighs a little less and takes a little less time, but again, the data that's in there, unless you're rekeying, it isn't available. Automated systems provide data that is usable for improved reporting, lowering costs, lowering rework, and just improving your daily activities. So if you compare automation to non-automation, you look at it like a restaurant. How much time do you want to be cooking versus cleaning the dishes, by example? So when I say cleaning the dishes, I'm saying those are the clerical activities that can be automated. And so you can really focus on those activities that really produce products that serve the brand, serve the consumer, and mitigate risk.
And, you know, sometimes it's getting down to scalability too, right? We hear this all the time. Every single day, food safety teams are getting more to do. HARPC is going to add a lot more to do. But what I'm not hearing is that people are getting a whole lot more people to do all of this new work. And so, you know, in the end, if you look at some of the other technologies that companies implemented, whether, you know, they're your supply chain management systems or procurement systems or HR systems, you know, why do companies implement these? They implemented them because they saved time and they saved money. They added scalability. They allowed you to do more with less and created efficiencies. And it's really the same now with, you know, food safety management systems. Dan, this has really, really been very, very insightful. Don't go away. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to spend just a few minutes, just got, I think, 3 slides to tell you a little bit about how SafetyChain can help you automate HACCP and soon HARPC. While we're doing that, this is the time for you to queue up your questions for Dan. Everybody should be seeing now on the lower right-hand side of your screen the Q&A tab. Simply enter your question there and hit send, and while I go through the next couple of slides, we'll queue those questions up for Dan. And then when we're finished with the Q&A, those of you who would like to stay on, we're going to bring Dave Detweiler in, and Dave will show you a demonstration of SafetyChain's HACCP and HARPC automation solutions. So while we have those questions lining up, SafetyChain has a module called SafetyChain for HACCP and HARPC. This solution does a lot of the things that Dan spoke about. It allows you to automate the workflow of your plan management. It allows you to define unlimited CCPs, PRPs, GMPs, all the different Ps for as many plants and facilities that you have. It allows you to auto-schedule those tasks and sends those alerts out when something isn't completed. All data that's entered into the system, this can be data that's coming from equipment, it can be data that's coming from a lab, it could be data that's being entered on SafetyChain mobile application devices. All of this information is being analyzed in real time against specs and requirements, so those NCR alerts are going out at the fastest time possible to the stakeholders so that timely CAPAs can be completed. All records are time and date stamped, and all records are uploaded into this central repository of FSQA data for benchmarking, trending, continuous improvement, and then you've got on-demand access to that information for customer inquiries, for audits, and of course for your USDA and FDA inspections and inquiries. Our HACCP HARPC module is a module of SafetyChain for food. This is the leading solution in the industry that really takes all food safety and quality assurance automation needs and puts them into a dedicated centralized platform versus siloed point solutions, so that you've got this dedicated platform to help you with FSQA automation at all points along your supply chain, what's coming in, what you're doing with it, and where it's going. So this includes supplier compliance, food safety management, food quality management, and regulatory and GFSI compliance and audit management. And then there's a suite of mobile applications that operates across the entire solution. You know, we talk a lot about timely information, right? SafetyChain is really designed to be a preventive solution, a food safety smoke alarm in the cloud, if you will, that's really designed to get that non-conformance information in the fastest manner possible to proactively prevent problems before they start versus reactively trying to figure out how the problem started and how to repair the damage afterwards. So very, very big focus on prevention. And with that, we're going to come to some questions for Dan. And Dan, I see them coming in already here, so let's just go to some of these here. I've got a question from Angong, and I hope that I've pronounced your name correctly. My apologies if I didn't. Dan, how does automation deal with traceability of product backward to inventory, production data, and raw materials? How can that be supported by automation?
Well, that's a great question, and it can be supported by automation in the way forms, electronic forms are developed. And as you develop those forms, if you're putting in key identifiers for the lots and the products that you're putting into your process, then you have a ready-made ability to do root cause and analysis on the data and tests performed against those products, ingredients, and processes. I hope that answered your question.
Okay. And then you've got, you know, a lot of root cause analysis information too, because you've got every test that was done, you have when it was done, you have if there was a non-conformance, you've got the CAPA documentation. So you've got some real root cause analysis capabilities there as well. Esther is asking, Dan, with the move from HACCP to HARPC, is the government requiring food companies to implement Six Sigma tools? And if that's true, so much of what we heard reminded Esther of what she learned in Six Sigma. So first, can you answer, do you know if the government is going to require Six Sigma tools? But if you have Six Sigma initiatives in your company, how can this kind of automation support Six Sigma?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And the initial question is, no, there's no requirement to follow Six Sigma requirements or protocol. But those will serve you well in the development and execution of your programs and the data analysis and reporting that's generated from them. So using those tools is really a terrific way to achieve continuous improvement and understanding your processes specific to food safety and quality assurance as well, for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And let's see, Janet is saying, FSMA requires many records to be reviewed by a qualified individual. How would this be handled in an automated solution?
That's a great question. So automated solutions allow for rules and roles. So you can have an administrator who is responsible, or several key stakeholders responsible for reviewing. In this technology, there's auto scheduling. And so you can schedule when a document needs to review well in advance of its expiration date. And if it should expire, some stakeholder does not review it as should be, then escalating alerts can continue and notify others to make sure that you remain audit ready as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Question from Joseph saying, have you seen any issues with adoption of mobile technologies? I think we've seen the opposite of that, but maybe you can address that.
Actually, you're right. The plants that are using mobile technology today, those technicians, those receiving personnel, their fellow workers are envious of that technology because, frankly, they see it. They see it in the rest of their life, and now they're seeing it in the workplace. And they see the efficiencies that are gained, and it's really a treat to see this change in management going on on the work floor.
Yeah, I think we forget sometimes because in the food industry, people spend a lot of hours at work, right? But no matter what somebody's job is at work, they go home and they're using the same technology as everybody. One of the things you mentioned earlier, I think, is a good point to bring out here, which is that the mobile devices are intuitive. They can actually act as a coach and make somebody's job easier. Forms are available in the native language of the person that's using them. But you mentioned the envy. We did one of our tech talks a couple of months ago with Michelle Eddy. She's the head of food safety and quality at Unice. If anybody's ever watched the TV show, The Most Dangerous Catch, those boats are the Unice fleet. They're up in Alaska. They're one of the world's largest provider of fish from Alaska fisheries. And when they went live on SafetyChain, HR started to get all of these requests for people to transfer into Michelle's department. They wanted to transfer into QA, and they absolutely could not figure out what this was about. And it was a lot. It was 30, transfer requests inside of a week. And they started to talk to these people, and they wanted to be able to carry around the hip cool tablets. So, which we thought was pretty funny.
Cool.
I think that's all the questions. What was that, Dan?
I was just saying, cool factor aside, these, the practical side of mobile devices compared to paper, it's just remarkable. You can embed hints in these electronic forms. As I mentioned earlier, they can cascade open for non-compliance and automated CAPA. So training burdens go down.
Yeah, go ahead.
Training burdens
it's not
go
going to
down.
allow the mistakes either, right? Because if you put a wrong range in, or if you forget to fill out a field and you hit submit, it's not going to accept it. It's going to give you an error notice. It actually helps make jobs easier because it acts really, as you said, as a coach. Dan, this has really, really been, very insightful. Thank you so much. I'm going to just check one more tab to see if I caught all of the questions. I think I did. So with this, I'm going to give people a little bit more information. Then we're going to turn it over to Dave. So let's see. Well, the first slide said you'll get the recording and the slides on Monday, and this one says tomorrow, so we'll see. Somewhere between tomorrow and Monday, everybody will get an email that will have the recording and the slides from today. If you'd like more information on SafetyChain's HACCP solution, you can send an email to info@SafetyChain. If you'd like to, chat with Dan directly, you can see Dan's email address here as well. We've got our next Tech Talk on October 16th, and we're going to focus on audits, regulatory audits, GFSI audits, internal audits, and customer audits, and how technology can help you be audit ready all the time. If you go to SafetyChain.com, there's a lot of great things coming up. Our next FSMA Friday on August 28th is going to be on building a FSMA-ready food safety plan. If you're in the Midwest and you are an SQF certified company or considering becoming SQF certified, SafetyChain will be sponsoring SQS Information Day in Lisle, Illinois on September 9th. And if you are one of the 2,000 people that registered for SafetyChain's 2014 GFSI Leadership Series, we're launching our 2015 series. This is going to be all about GFSI in the age of FSMA. The North American leaders from SQF and BRC and FSSC 22000 will all be doing sessions. This launches on September 25th. And when you get your follow-up email with the slides and recording from today, there'll be some information in there for you to learn how you can register. So we really hope that we see you there. And with that, we're going to turn it over now to our Director of Solutions Consulting here at SafetyChain, Dave Detweiler. If you're leaving, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found the information valuable. And if you're staying on for the optional demo, here's Dave.
Thanks,
Dave?
Barbara. Yeah,
there you are.
I was just waiting for the ball. Thanks, Barbara. I appreciate that invite. Always tough to follow you and Dan along in these conversations, right? So what I wanted to do, though, is give a good example and kind of walk you through some live software here for just the next couple minutes, right? We'll take about the next 10 or 15 minutes. I'll show everyone here who's staying on with us a brief live example of how HACCP and HARPC might be automated within the systems. So,
and Dave, I'll just suggest to you that you hit the double arrows and go into full screen, and those on the phone can also hit those double arrows at the top to go into full screen as well.
Yeah, you should see that now, Barbara. Correct?
There you are. There you are. I won't interrupt you again.
No problem. So we just talked a lot about automation and what systems look like to actually automate. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you two pieces of technology very quickly, right? Just for the sake of time, I appreciate all the time that everyone's given us so far to this point. The first piece of technology we're going to talk about is a web-based application. That's what you're looking at on your system. That's what you're looking at on your screen. It's a live, living, and breathing site and system that you can go to. One of the things that people talk about when you're managing things using automation is the ability to have this roll-up view. So one of the things that we've talked about when you start to automate HACCP and HARPC, a lot of it is just view into data, making that data information, right? The idea that now you have access to this information. So what you're seeing here on your screen is a home page. This home page in the SafetyChain system is completely configurable by an end user, meaning that they can manipulate the different reports on their home page, right? The idea that it becomes very easily for an end user, a manager, right? The QA director, the food safety manager, the HACCP program manager, right? Whoever it might be within your facility can actually determine what they should see on their home page. As you'll see, I have some corrective action summaries here. I'll also have some unresolved corrective actions on my home page. One of the things we talk a lot about is audit readiness. This home page can communicate to you if there are items or tasks that are coming up on being done, right? Scheduled tasks. Or if tasks have been past their due date. We talked about generating notifications or highlighting corrective actions that have been unresolved. So this will be the first form of technology that we'll talk about, a web-based application that you can go to. Something else that's important, though, when we talk about HACCP, HARPC, actually when we talk about any of the food safety and quality, needs and wishes and goals, the second piece that comes up all the time is actually mobile technology. So what you should see here as I switch my screen over is a tablet device that I'm actually holding in my hand. You'll see a SafetyChain mobile application next to my favorite Princess Dress Up app, my Ice Age Adventure app here I have on my mobile device. But the idea that the SafetyChain mobile app was built both on Android and iOS technologies, and what this is allowing our customers to do here at SafetyChain is actually enter in and provide that data. Today I'm going to show you some specific examples about HACCP and HARPC and how that might be handled. But you can see I can log into this device just like I can log into my web application. The system's completely rules and roles based, and it will give me a series of either jobs that might be assigned to me or tasks, and I'm going to show you how this works live here in a moment, or maybe even forms, right? So just to give you a quick view here of a form, you may actually have a CCP calibration form. This one's around calibrating a thermometer, right? You'll see some basic questions on here. This might even look like some of your forms today. We're capturing a temperature. I'm using an NIST reading here, right? I'm validating against my digital thermometer. We're even doing calculations on this form based on the different entry fields. But one of the things that everyone always talks about, and one of the questions that came up earlier was, well, how do we make these easy? Notice that there are notes, that there are hints on these forms that as an individual goes through it, they can not only read it, but we'll talk about how interactively here in a moment the system can actually start to notify to that end user. So I'm going to back up here for a second and pull out of this, and we're going to back up to the beginning, back to the web page we started on. And we're going to start with kind of, what I believe, and not everyone may agree, but kind of the baseline, the foundation of all of this is that you have some document. You have a document, a HACCP document, you have a calibration document, and what the SafetyChain solution provides for is the ability for you to store and house these documents in one database, right? We're going to talk about the records and the ability for you to report off of the records as well in one database, right? But a lot of times you'll have different types of programs, not just HACCP programs. You might even have maintenance programs. But for today, I'm going to click on the HACCP program, and some of these might look familiar, right? You might have an hourly calibration CCP document. You might actually have an actual HACCP plan document depending on different products or different ingredients that you're running that day, right? All of that's capable within our system. What our system will actually do is maintain and manage these documents. It will actually put the documents under management. It'll watch for their expiry or review or revision date. It will generate out notices to owners to review and update these documents and to make sure that these documents are staying current, right? So the idea that a baseline of your foundation of your program, you have these documents. These documents typically then reference the process or the flow that you're going to go through. But you also need to review and approve these documents on a regularly scheduled basis, all capable within our system. Let's take this one step further. I know some of you here on the line are GFSI, and I'm not going to turn this into a GFSI demonstration, but I think this example will resonate with many of you. When we talk about HACCP and HARPC, and then you also combine in GFSI, and you have customers coming in and doing audits, one of the nice things about the SafetyChain solution is that not only can you have a document that might support your HACCP program, for example, well, part of your compliance may also be, in this case, being compliant to SQF, and in this case, SQF 2.4.3, which is actually the HACCP code itself, right? The idea that within our system, you can actually track and house a document against the code element, right, for, in this case, 2.4.3, as you're seeing it come up on your screen. So I have subsections and clauses and codes and descriptions here in the system, backing up SQF. Just waiting for this to refresh here for a moment. And what you'll see here is that, so not only do I have the subsection, the clause, the description, but you'll see again, here's that HACCP document. That HACCP document actually shows compliance around GFSI. Well, we understand at SafetyChain that one document may actually prove compliance for several different areas, right? It might be compliance for your 2.4.3 subsection. It also might be the compliant document for your HACCP program that you show a customer. So within our system, you can not only create and version documents, as you're seeing down here at the bottom, right, document history, but you can also link documents to multiple areas of the system, so you're only ever maintaining one document, right? So only one document is being maintained. So a little bit about documentation, but keeping an eye on time, let's talk about some of the fun stuff too. And I think this is kind of fun because not only are we maintaining documents in a document repository and generating notices out of the system to remind people to update those documents, well, it's also those documents are actually supporting your process, right? They're supporting your program. So you'll see I'm coming over here to something called FSQA process automation. And what we can do within the SafetyChain system is provide a scheduling tool. The idea that you're going to have certain checks, certain tasks, whether that be your CCPs, which I'm going to show you an example of here for a second, or whether that be your calibration logs, or we even talked about your sanitation programs and your preventative maintenance programs. All of those things can be scheduled within the system. Typically, those things that are being scheduled will then have forms associated with them. Like you'll see here, I have my sanitizing and recirculating wash water, or my metal detecting CCP, right? So the idea that these can be set to a schedule, whether that schedule is every hour, every half hour, every 2 hours, every day you need to do the calibration, every week you need to do an inspection or a walkthrough. All of that can be scheduled within the solution. So I'm going to do this ad hoc here rather than using a scheduler so I can show it to you live. But let's look at what that means to you when you use a web-based application combined with the mobile device. So here's my HACCP program. I'm going to just ad hoc create it here so I can show it to you live on the slide. The idea that I create that task, and in turn, so remember, a scheduler can actually create this task automatically, right? In turn, that can generate tasks to end users. So if I come back over here to my, my mobile device we were talking about, notice here that the tasks are at 0 currently. I'm going to refresh it. I'm going to hit this refresh button up top, and you'll see that now live, I actually have 2 awaiting results, 2 tasks that were assigned to me. They can be assigned to groups. They can be assigned to individual users. But what you'll see here is I have my metal detecting CCP that was assigned to me. So maybe I need to go through and complete the metal detection form, right, as I pass through the different bars or whatever it might be, right? My verification's done, okay? An easy example, pass, fail, right? We also have the ability, and this is where we see a lot of great interest, especially from our customers, not just for HACCP, but for a lot of the testing and the quality, even the quality attributes you're capturing on the floor. Notice here I'm checking for my fresh rinse PAA and some pH. Well, I can have minimum and maximum values related to that. The idea that if I enter in 80 here, notice that the form automatically, intuitively, as I mentioned earlier, opens up. It confirms that that's outside of specification, and it opens up a corrective action, which I can hit a drop down, and it might give me suggestions on the things that need to occur, right? If I enter in a proper or a compliance field, it's going to let me continue forward. And you can do that over and over again. One of the other nice things about mobile devices and using these types of tools is the idea that you can take pictures, you can take photographs directly from the device, attach those to the inspection, to the check. So one way we see is, hey, we call these real time, right? Real time, I'm entering something in, there's a corrective action that needs to be done. Other times we have customers, when this data is entered in, the system might need to generate out notifications. Maybe you have a notification that looks something like this that's generated out of the system, right? Here were the results that came in. Here's a link back to that. Maybe there's even an open corrective action that needs to be tracked within the system to completion. All of that's capable. So now we're talking about a web-based system that can house your documents, can set up a scheduler, that can generate forms to capture that data, right? The data that's being captured can also generate alerts and notifications. So all of that's capable. Now let's take it one step further. As one of the questions was mentioned earlier, a lot of times these records then need to be signed off on. Well, wouldn't it be nice to have a system that could notify you, right? Maybe it notifies the supervisor at the end of a shift, at the end of the run. After data has been gathered, it generates a notification to an end user to actually come into the system and sign off on records. So I'm just kind of jumping a couple screens here, but I'm going to come to a record sign-off page. So think, a person might get a text message, they might get an email, they might get a notification on their home page that there are records that they need to sign off on. Our system is fully compliant within the electronic guidelines for housing and storing electronic signature, as well as unalterable date timestamps. So you'll see here on my sign-off page, I may actually have that specific CCP that I can review. It might be an individual check, it might be an aggregate check, but I can also print it, I can sign it, I can drill back into the additional details of it. But what you'll see here in this example is the system actually signing off on it. So you'll see that I completed that one at 12:54 yesterday, and I actually signed off on it. Again, demonstration, so please bear with the example that I'm both doing the test and signing off of the test. But start to finish. So documents, forms, now you have electronic sign-off. Well, now what happens as we wrap this all up, someone's going to walk into your office and say, hey, by the way, cool that you have the documentation, cool that you have the forms in place, that's great. Now I want to see the records. Well, how easy is it once you have a centralized database of this that you can pull the information out? So those home pages can track and trend data, but oftentimes we hear our customers say, man, it's just great for someone to be able to walk in and say, hey, you know what, Dave? I need the last 30 days of those CCP calibration records. Who did it, when it was done, and I need those now, right? And the idea that very quickly you can come into the system, you can pull that information out, you can grab the information, you can export it out. It will always include unalterable dates, timestamps, when checks were done, who did those checks, what the results of those checks were, if there were corrective actions associated with it, what the comments were around those corrective actions as well, right? So to wrap this up briefly in the 15 minutes of what we just talked about, when you talk about a HACCP plan, you're going to have that process flow, you're going to have frequency, you're going to have verification tests, you're going to have corrective actions, right? You're going to have CCP checks that are done. You're going to have a document that backs it up. And very briefly today, what I wanted to show you was that there's a web-based system out there today that's SafetyChain. It can store and house those documents. Not only can it store and house those documents, it can give you real-time home pages and corrective action availability, and it can also provide you those tools, like we were looking at here, to do these things online, on a mobile device, take direct observation, and really gain and add to the FSQA programs that you're already running. So with that, Barbara, I'm going to give it back to you. I think I took up my 15 minutes there, but I appreciate the time today.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave. let's see. Let's go back out of full screen right now. I know we're at the top of the hour, but if anybody is out there that has questions for Dave about the demo that they just saw, you can put those in right now the same way that you submitted the questions for Dan by putting your questions into the box on the lower right-hand side and hitting send. So we'll wait a minute to see if we've got any questions for you.
I might not get as many questions as Dan, Barbara. Hopefully it's not.
I know. Well, it is the top of the hour, and I'm sure people are running to other meetings, but I did want to see if we have any. And it doesn't look like we do. See, you did such a thorough job that there's nothing left uncovered. So with that, wow, a lot of you stayed on for the demo, so thank you so much for giving us an hour out of what we know are your busy days. We hope that you found this information insightful and valuable, and we hope to see you online at another Safety Chain Tech Talk soon. So with that, Dave, thank you so much. Dan, as always, fabulous, and we'll see everybody online soon. Bye-bye, everyone.